Happy in a Boring Life. Why Slowing Down is the Fastest Way to Grow. Written by Joey Lelyveld. Forward. Close your eyes for a second. You're on stage at Tomorrowland. Thousands of people in front of you, hands in the air, bass shaking your chest, and right in the middle of all that madness, a quiet little voice inside you whispers, "This space is going to break you." That whisper was the beginning of this book. This is the follow-up to Unhappy with the Dream Life, my first book about chasing the dream, touring the world, building a name, and stacking milestones I thought would make me happy. They didn't. This book is about what came after. Not some dramatic reinvention, but a quiet rebuild. A slower, more intentional way of living that actually supports me instead of draining me. A boring life maybe, but one I genuinely enjoy. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a love letter to mediocrity. It's a manual for creating a version of success that won't burn you out. I'll take you behind the curtain of what looked shiny on Instagram and share the parts I never posted. From confetti cannons to warehouse jobs. Inside you'll find personal stories, mindset shifts, practical tools, and questions that help me find more clarity, peace, and consistency than I ever had in the fast lane. Think of this book as a mix between field notes and a late-night kitchen table conversation. Real, messy, and hopefully helpful. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not perfect. I still mess up. I'll probably butcher a theory or two. I'm not writing this as a guru, just someone who hit a wall, slowed down, and figured a few things out the hard way. So why should you care? Because maybe you're sprinting through life too, chasing more, louder, faster, and wondering why it all still doesn't feel like enough. I've been there. This book is for that moment when you pause and ask yourself, is this even working for me? If this book gives you one fresh perspective, one useful tool, or even just one moment of clarity, then it's done its job. Last thing, don't rush through this. Let it breathe. Do the reflection exercises, revalue the boring stuff. Weirdly enough, boredom has been the best fuel for fresh ideas and real growth. Whatever you do in life, DJ, nurse, founder, student, parent, the principles in here apply. This isn't about going harder, it's about building a rhythm you can actually live in. Alright, flip the page, let's begin. 1. The dream that broke me. Open quote. Sometimes we climb the ladder of success only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. Ending quote. Thomas Merton. The summer of 2014 was supposed to be the peak. Everything I had dreamed of. Touring the world, releasing music on the biggest labels, playing on the most iconic festivals was finally happening. I had been grinding for years, chasing a dream with tunnel vision, and now I was living it. But I wasn't happy. That particular day was supposed to be one of the biggest milestones of my career. Tomorrowland. The kind of gig you grow up watching on YouTube, imagining what it would feel like to stand on that stage. A badge of honor, a sign you've made it. Everyone around me was buzzing. My team, my family, my friends. They were so proud, so excited. I should have been riding that wave with them, but I felt nothing. Just this quiet, unshakable numbness. At 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. Nick was at the door, as always. My tour manager, my friend, my unpaid therapist. He was more than just someone. He was someone who believed in me before most of the people even knew my name. He never missed a gig. Even when I couldn't pay him properly, he just showed up. Always. He was glowing. "Dude, you're playing at Tomorrowland today. How cool is that?" I nodded, smiled, and tried to meet his excitement. But I felt like I was acting in a scene I didn't audition for. We jumped into the car, heading towards Boom in Belgium. Just a 45 minutes drive from home. That in itself was comforting. At least I'd sleep in my own bed that night. That was one small piece of normal in a day that already felt too big. About halfway through the drive, we hit traffic. I got twitchy. Even though we left early, my mind raced. What if we were late? What if something went wrong? Meanwhile, Nick was blasting EDM bangers, singing along, soaking the moment. The contrast between us couldn't have been sharper. When we finally got there, we checked in, grabbed our wristbands, and entered the backstage area. It felt like a hidden world. Lush green surroundings, perfectly organized chaos, the biggest DJs in the world just hanging around like it was no big deal. It was impressive, sure, but instead of feeling like I'd arrived, I felt like a fraud. Like I had stumbled into a party I wasn't really invited to. Nick? He blended in immediately. Started chatting people up, lining up content for my socials, doing what needed to be done. I appreciated it, I really did, but all I wanted was to disappear into the corner and wait it out. Then it was the time to head to the stage. We took a boat. Yep, a boat. Most people would kill for that kind of experience. I was just counting down the minutes until it would be over. The closer we got, the more tension built. My usual pre-show nerves kicked in. My body had its own routine. Heart racing, sweaty palms, emergency bathroom trip. Nick wasn't phased. He knew the drill. He knew me. When I got back, I grabbed a beer. That was just another ritual. Just enough alcohol to loosen the nerves, but not so much that it dulled the performance. A delicate dance I had mastered. And then it was showtime. The first few minutes on stage were a blur of anxiety. But then the music dropped. The crowd moved. I locked in. For a moment I felt free. Truly free. It was the only part of the day that actually felt good. After the set, Nick handed me another beer and looked at me like I'd just climbed Everest. Dude, do you realize where you are right now? You just played Tomorrowland. And for a brief second, it hit me. I felt it. The weight, the honor, the pride. But just as quickly as it came, it faded. We stayed to watch the closing show, then made our way home. And I couldn't stop thinking about the difference between how Nick experienced the day and how I did. He soaked in every detail, every second. I got maybe 2 hours of genuine enjoyment out of the whole thing. That didn't feel right, and it wasn't the first time. The truth is, I hadn't been present for a long time. I was stuck in survival mode, going through the motions. 2000 and 2015 were technically the best years of my career. I was releasing on Spin-In, Toolroom and Defected. I did remixes for Jennifer Lopez and Pitbull, collaborated with Hardwell, ran my own label, we launched a clothing line, we threw events. On paper, it was a dream. But inside, I was crumbling. The fame started creeping into my regular life. First, it was shows. Then, local bars. People asking for selfies when I was just trying to chill. It got exhausting. I couldn't go anywhere without being JoeySuki. I couldn't just be Joey. And so, I put on the mask. The artist version of myself. The polished version. And once that mask goes on long enough, it starts to feel like your only face. I began overthinking everything. What I said, how I acted, even how I looked when I was just walking down the street. My brain never shut off. I started losing the plot. No real goals, no spark. The studio, once my creative playground, became a place I dreaded. I was chasing new sounds, switching genres, desperately trying to reignite something, but it wasn't working. Worse, I felt like I was losing people too. My fans didn't follow me on the detour. The booking slowed down. The money started drying up. My identity felt tied to the momentum, and when that stopped, I didn't know who I was anymore. Then came the weekend trip, LA and Vegas. The kind of weekend people dream of. The flight to LA was long. 14 hours of me pretending to be excited. I landed, met up with Mighty Fools, Jelle and Andy. We saw the giant poster with our names outside the venue. They still got hyped by that stuff. I nodded and smiled, pretending I did too, but it was all just noise. Vegas was even worse. Confetti, lights, rooftop views over the strip. I was dead behind the eyes, playing sets to drunk tourists while feeling completely alone. After the show, I walked back to the hotel. My face in the mirror told the whole story. I looked like a ghost of myself. I always booked the earliest flight home, less time in limbo, more time to escape, but it meant no sleep. And by that point, I was just running on fumes. September 2014, I was booked for a 2-week tour in Asia. Multiple cities, tight schedules, barely any rest. That morning, I woke up and broke. Tears, paralysis. I couldn't even move. I couldn't even fake it anymore. I called my manager. "I'm not going," I said. He paused, asked if I was sure. "I just can't do it," I said. And for the first time in a long time, I listened to myself. He handled it, cancelled everything. I paid for most of the cost myself, but I didn't care. All I wanted was to stay at home. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't know what came next, who I was without the gigs, without the buzz, without the mask. Each day I walked to the studio, stared at the screen, made terrible music, deleted it, and walked back home. At night, I went out with Nick to avoid being alone with my thoughts. My relationship fell apart. I wasn't me. Eventually, I packed my stuff and moved in back with my parents. Back to the same bedroom where I once dreamed of becoming a DJ. I had everything I thought I wanted. And yet, there I was. Empty. Totally empty. Climbed the ladder, wrong wall. I didn't have a plan. No roadmap, just a crash. And after the dust settled, the only thing left was me. The question now wasn't, what's next? But, who am I without all of this? That's where the rebuild began. Quiet, hesitant, and yes, boring. Doing the work. Some chapters finish with a short list of reflection questions linked to what you've just read. They're the same prompts I used, meant to nudge you to look at your own life. You're free to skip them, but know this. Change doesn't happen when you breeze through someone else's story. It starts the moment you pause, question, and rewrite your own. Quote, "If your dream life burns you out, it's not the dream, it's a trap." End quote. Part 2. The Rebuild. 2. Choosing boring. Open quote. "Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you." End quote. Anne Lamott. There I was, back at my parents' house, right where it all started. No job, no girlfriend, no hobbies, and for the first time in years, absolutely nothing demanding my attention. It was me versus me. After a few weeks, my mom started to notice something. I don't know if she picked up on how much I was spiraling, or if she just saw her son bored out of his mind, wandering around the house. But she caught it early. Time had become my worst enemy. With nothing to do, I spent my days overthinking everything. And somehow, even doing nothing all day still left me completely drained. We were having coffee one weekday when she gently brought it up. "So, do you have any idea what your next step might be?" she said. I gave her a blank stare and said, "Honestly, I have no clue. I don't know what to do from here." And I meant it. I felt like I was stuck in a maze with no way out. The thought of being stuck forever, that made my chest tighten. I felt cornered by life. She looked at me and said, "Maybe it's time to just find a job. Not a career, just something to do. Get out of the house a bit." I remember that moment so clearly. The idea of taking a job, any job, felt huge. I hadn't worked for someone else in years. I was used to calling my own shots. Truthfully, my ego was in the way. That inflated artist ego I had built was still lingering, and I wasn't proud of it. I said, trying to sound open. That might actually be a good idea. But deep down, my body was screaming no. Later that day, I opened my laptop to start searching for jobs. But instead of diving in, I opened up Facebook to distract myself. Classic move. While scrolling, I saw a post from someone in my network looking for help tagging clothes for a few months. It was close by, temporary, low commitment. I messaged him, and just like that, I had a job. 3 months, tagging clothes, nothing sexy about it. But it was something I could handle. Then came the first day. I walked through the factory door. And who's there to greet me? The mother of an old friend. She smiled, tilted her head, and said, "Aren't you that famous DJ?" Boom! Ego crushed. Everything I had been afraid of, being seen, being judged, feeling like I'd failed, happened within the very first minute. But looking back, it was exactly what I needed. The anxiety left my body, my ego took a hit, and I landed hard, with both feet back on the ground. This was real life. I was about to spend 3 months tagging clothes in a warehouse, and weirdly, it felt like peace. The job itself was basic. 8 to 5, bring your own lunch, work with your hands, talk to the same people every day, do the same thing over and over again. For most people, that's just normal. But for me, it felt like I'd stepped into another universe. I was like a wild animal dropped into a zoo. I felt boxed in, trapped. But something unexpected started to happen. I liked it. I liked waking up the same time every day. I liked the structure. I liked knowing what the day would bring. I liked seeing the same faces, learning a new skill, being held accountable, and most of all, I liked going to bed at night feeling like I'd actually done something. At first, the boredom almost broke me. Doing the same thing every day, talking to the same people, punching the clock, it felt like a cage. But here's what I didn't see yet. Boredom was exactly what I needed. When your brain has nothing urgent to grab onto, something called the default mode network switches on. That's just science speak for your mind wandering, connecting the dots, asking bigger questions. It feels uncomfortable at first, like you're wasting time. But that boredom, it's where clarity sneaks back in. So when the 3 months came to an end and the company offered me another 3, I took it without hesitation. I was getting more responsibility, even started delivering clothes. I felt like I was progressing again. And progress, after months of plateauing, felt like a drug. Around that same time, I started looking for my own apartment. Living with my parents had served its purpose, but now I had an income again. I craved my own space. It didn't take long before I found a small but cozy studio right in the city center. Great location, affordable rent, and best of all, it was mine. I moved in. Around the same time, I also started dating again. Yep, that happened fast. But the truth is, the previous relationship had ended in my mind long before it ended in real life. So when someone came into my life who made me feel excited again, I didn't hesitate. I was ready. I now had a home, I had a girl, I had a job, I had structure. I remember thinking, why didn't I do this earlier? For so long, I believed that having a regular job was a form of failure, that it would be the end of freedom. But it turned out to be the beginning of something new, something much better. The biggest win of all, routine. I used to live like a ping pong ball, staying up late, working whenever I felt like it, exercising whenever I felt like it. I never had structure. And I didn't realize how much that was messing with my head. Having a routine calmed my mind. The brain fog cleared and I could think again. Tagging clothes, chatting with coworkers, doing something repetitive but productive, it became my therapy. Without even realizing it, I stopped overthinking and started moving again. One thing that stood out to me the most, for the first time in years, my work ended at 5 p.m. I didn't have to check Instagram, answer emails, or take calls. No notifications, no pressure. I was so used to being on 24/7, so being off felt strange at first. But man, it felt good. I started enjoying my evenings and weekends. I'd organize barbecues in my little garden, go for drinks on a Tuesday night just because I felt like it. I was living again. I slept better, ate healthier, worked out more, and I got obsessed with learning. I devoured books, listened to podcasts, soaked up everything I could. I wanted to grow. I wanted to evolve. My mind had quieted down, and with that calm came clarity. I started thinking with intention, feeling more than analyzing. That space in my head gave me the ability to make decisions again. One of those decisions was this. The factory wasn't going to be my end station. I appreciated the job, but I knew deep down that I had more to give. And I still loved music, just not the artist life anymore. That's when the idea hit me. Why hadn't there been someone to guide me through all of this as a young artist? Someone who could have helped me navigate the chaos, make better life decisions. So I googled artist coaching. Nothing. That's when I realized this will be my next move. I rebranded my old artist pages, built a website, launched my own new company, Artist Coaching. Almost immediately, clients started showing up. My name still had weight in the industry, and that gave me a head start. By day, I worked in a factory. At night, I was building my business, taking calls with anyone interested. The first coaching sessions were experiments. I was figuring it out as I went. What people needed, what I could offer, how I could help. Luckily, one of my strengths was my willingness to try. Being an artist had toughened me up. I didn't care what people thought. That kind of mental freedom, it was a superpower. Coaching didn't feel like work. It felt like those early music production days. Pure joy, zero pressure. But my time at the factory was ending, so I had to ask, what's next? That's when an old artist friend reached out to me. They're looking for a product manager at my record label. Are you interested? He worked at an indie label that managed multiple sub-labels across genres. I had released music there in the past and I kind of knew the owner, so I took the meeting. We talked, I listened, and I went with my gut. It felt right. The job offer was for a year, and I said yes. So, I left the factory and started managing releases, artwork, promotion plans, and metadata. The job itself wasn't thrilling, but the environment was a breath of fresh air. The team was young, the vibe was free, the culture wasn't rigid like the factory. I liked it. The commute was 45 minutes each way, something I wasn't used to, but it became a gift. My car turned into a rolling university. I listened to podcasts and audiobooks non-stop. Education on wheels. During the day, I worked at the label. At night, I grew artist coaching. Weekends were sacred. Time with my girlfriend, friends, and doing things that actually mattered. I started making every decision based on one filter. Does it feel right? If yes, I'd go for it. If not, I'd stop. My gut became my compass, and still is. As my life was coming back together, so was my business. I built it from first principles. What mattered to me? How did I want to work? What was I willing to sacrifice? What drained me? What energized me? Those questions helped me shape a life that finally worked for me, instead of against me. That year was a turning point. I was living with my girlfriend. in a healthy relationship, with a stable income, a structured routine, clear work hours, a job that gave me purpose, a side project that was growing into something bigger, and most importantly, I was finally unapologetically myself again. Not a brand, not a performer, not a product. Just Joey. I had built a new life. Calm, structured, and fulfilling. A boring life, maybe, but for the first time, it felt like home. Getting a new job helped me slow down. Having a routine helped me feel human again. But peace doesn't stick around on its own. You have to design for it, intentionally. That's when I started building systems. Not just for work, but for life. Doing the work. 1. What's one simple routine I could commit to this week that might bring more peace or clarity to my day? 2. When was the last time I felt proud of doing something small, and not because it looked good, but because it felt good? 3. If I stopped overthinking just one thing in my life right now, what would I finally have the energy or courage to do? Open quote. If chaos is your comfort zone, peace will feel like failure until it saves you. End quote. Chapter 3. Activating autopilot. Open quote. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. End quote. James Clear. Back then, I really believed that the ultimate freedom meant having no structure at all. No schedule, no routines, no rules. That felt like success to me. Here's what a regular weekday used to look like. I'd wake up whenever I wanted to wake up, usually around 9:30 a.m. Still in my pajamas, I'd grab breakfast and open my laptop. Emails, social media, the latest music industry news, it all blurred together. Eventually, I'd shower and head to the studio, usually somewhere in the early afternoon. The studio was in an industrial zone, windowless and dim, but I didn't think much of it. I'd sit down and just start making music. No real plan. Sometimes I'd pick up where I left off, other times I'd start something new. I had no structure, no direction. Sometimes I'd work until 6 p.m., sometimes later. But I always tried to be home for dinner, especially if I was cooking, something I actually loved. Evenings were slow, a bit of TV, and then, right on cue, Nick would text, "Party time!" At around 10 p.m., I'd head out for a drink while my girlfriend went to bed. I'd come home around 2 a.m., sleep, repeat. Weekends, total chaos. Every time I had a gig, I felt like I was being thrown into a brand new world with zero preparation. I never knew what to expect, where I'd end up, who was picking me up from the airport, if the hotel would be decent, where the nearest stores or hospital were. Yes, I thought about that constantly. What the club would be like, how the food would be, what time I could eat, or even if I could, and of course, whether the place was safe. Every weekend was a gamble. A new environment meant new people, new food, new culture, new stress. But I never saw it that way back then. I just thought I was tired from traveling. Now I know better. All that adapting, week after week, city after city, it drained me completely. You know that feeling during the first days of a holiday when you're still adjusting, still figuring out where you are? That was my life. Except I never had the time to get comfortable. By the time I started to adjust, I was already leaving again. And for years, I thought that was freedom. A new adventure every week. But what I didn't see back then was how it was breaking me. I was always tired. My creativity was fading. I felt numb, and yet I thought I was living the dream. Activating autopilot. There's one thing I massively underestimated for most of my life. The power of repetition. If you want to be great at something, you don't need motivation. You need repetition. You want to be a great footballer? Get on the field every day. Want to master free kicks? Practice free kicks every single day. That's how skills are built. The truth is, when someone makes something look easy, it's usually because they've repeated it so often it becomes part of them. They're not thinking about it anymore. It's in their muscle memory. That's what repetition does. It moves something from your conscious brain into your subconscious. It becomes automatic. It becomes a habit. That's what building systems is really about. Choosing the habits you want to automate. And it all starts with one simple question. What kind of person do I want to become? And then you follow it with, what behaviors does that person of me live by? Every single day. If you want to be fit, your systems need to support working out and eating clean, reliably. If you want to climb Everest, you need systems that train you for it, consistently. Because your systems shape your future. Kevin Kelly once said, "Show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities." And he's right. What you spend your time on is what you become. When I look back now, I see how I had willingly locked myself into a systemized life. And I loved it. I knew what to expect. I had structure, I had rhythm, and slowly I started to feel alive again. Of course, building those systems didn't come easy. Waking up at 7 a.m. every day, it sucked at first. But a few weeks in, it became natural. Going to bed at 11 p.m., same thing. At first it felt early, but then my body started craving sleep around that time. Having scheduled time off, that felt weird too. I was so used to being on all the time, but over time it started to feel right. Even my hunger synced up. My body knew when it was time to eat. All of those things became habits. I didn't need to think anymore. My body took over, and my mind, it got quiet again. That's when my creativity came back. It wasn't magic, it wasn't boredom. Once I stopped filling every gap with noise, no podcast in the gym, no endless scrolling before bed, my brain finally had space. And in that quiet, ideas started to show up again. Coaching frameworks, content angles, even little tweaks in my routines. Creativity doesn't thrive on chaos. It thrives on the stillness we usually avoid. Chapter 4. Designing my days. That period of my life felt like I was designing a new operating system for myself. Every choice was intentional. Every decision ran through a new filter. What do I want? What do I need? And what kind of life am I building here? And no, it wasn't selfish. You know that part in the airplane safety video? That's what I was doing. I was finally choosing me, but to do that, I had to face some hard questions. Questions no one ever asked me, including myself. Here are a few that changed everything. What kind of life do I really want to live? What does success mean to me? Emotionally, creatively, financially, socially? What would my ideal day or week look like? What am I doing that feels misaligned with my values? Who gets the best of my energy? And is that on purpose? What would I do if money wasn't a factor? What relationships need more attention or more boundaries? And what am I saying yes to that I should be saying no to? Now look, this wasn't a one-weekend journaling retreat where I figured it out all in one go. This was a slow burn, a process that took years. But asking these questions put something in motion, and motion creates change. One of the biggest lessons I learned that year was this. You rise by saying yes, you last by saying no. I had always been open to new ideas, always ready to jump onto the next thing. That was my strength, but it also made me unfocused. If I wanted to build something real, I had to get better at saying no. No to people who drained me. No to the events or calls that weren't aligned with my goals. No to anything that pulled me off track, even if it seemed fun or harmless. Because your life is shaped by your decisions. Every single one sends you into a direction. The question is it the right one? If yes, great. If not, pivot. Change the decision. I started asking myself, does this move me closer to the life I want? If not, it didn't make the calendar. That might sound harsh, but most people are living a life built from other people's expectations. I know I was, and that's how people end up unhappy. I truly believe if you live in alignment with your own values and you're honest with yourself, happiness follows. But honesty takes guts. You've got to be real with yourself. Ask yourself, what's actually important to me? What makes me feel alive? And what kind of life would I live if nobody was watching? Chapter 5. Discipline by Design. Right around this time, I became a dad. And if discipline wasn't important before, now it became non-negotiable. I made a promise. I take 1 full day off every week to be with my daughter. No exceptions, just one-on-one time. That became my daddy day, a fixed part of my calendar. That meant I had 4 days left to run my entire business. Could I grow faster working 5 or 6 days a week? Probably. But would it be worth the cost? Nope. I didn't want to be that cliche of a parent who said, I wish I spent more time with my kids. I wanted to be there, present, available, even when there was work piling up, IDs waiting, or emails coming in. I'll be honest, it wasn't always easy. In the beginning, I felt guilty. I'd be sitting on the floor playing with my daughter thinking, why are you wasting time here? You could be building your company right now. That voice took a while to quiet down. But over time, I realized this is the most valuable thing I could be doing. Being with her grounded me. It slowed me down in the best way possible. It reminded me of what I was building all of this for. I used to believe, like a lot of entrepreneurs do, that success meant working 70 hours a week. Nights, weekends, early mornings, no breaks. That's what you're told, right? That if you're not burning out, you're not trying hard enough. But that belief didn't serve me anymore. I didn't want to build a company that consumed my life. I didn't want to be a hero. I wanted to be a healthy, present human with a business that supported my life, not the other way around. So I stopped working evenings. I protected my weekends. I stuck to my 4-day work week, and my business still grew. Because the truth is, when you're clear, rested, and consistent, you don't need 70 hours. You just need to show up and do the work on the days you said you would. Chapter 6. The levers that keep me showing up. After a few messy experiments, I found 3 levers that keep me on track to this day. 1. Time blocking. Put your priorities on the calendar or they don't exist. I plan the week. Work blocks live from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. Thursday is Daddy Day, non-negotiable. Groceries have their own recurring slot. Even dinners with friends get a quarterly reminder. Why it works? Zero negotiation. The decision is made before the week starts. Fast recovery. If life nukes a block, I drag and drop it instead of abandoning it. Visible trade-offs. Saying yes to an extra meeting means saying no to kettlebells or bedtime stories. The calendar shows the cost in plain daylight. Number 2. Identity first. I'm the guy who shows up. Willpower cracks. Identity sticks. Each morning I remind myself, I'm the type of guy who keeps promises to himself. On low battery days, that might mean writing one ugly sentence or doing 5 push-ups is enough to keep the story true. By the way, need a spark? Read Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. 10 pages in, you'll start lacing your shoes out of pure peer pressure. One micro rep nourishes the identity loop. The next one gets easier. Number 3. Environment tweaks. Make the good choice the easy choice. Discipline loves a low friction surface. Here's my current setup. My workout clothes are on the ground next to my bed when I wake up. My backpack is packed every night. Laptop, charger, protein bar and water. Same grocery slot every Saturday. It keeps the fridge honest with fresh veggies and frozen fallback meals. Healthy snacks are in arm's reach. Junks lives inside the cabinets. Out of sight, out of mind. My gym is 10 minutes from home. No big commute required. And tag automation. Emails checked twice a day. Notifications are off. Calendar pings for planning date nights. And smart lights fade to warm at 10 p.m. My cue to tune out. Every tweak shaves a decision. Fewer decisions is more energy for the work that matters. Bringing the levers together. 1. Block the week. Paint the big rocks first. Leave breathing room for the 20% chaos window. 2. Start lines over deadlines. Open the project at 10 a.m. beats finish the project by Friday. Finish with a breadcrumb. End each day by writing tomorrow's first micro task. 4. Protect the asset. Sleep is part of the system. Skip it and the whole thing wobbles. Show up for those micro promises. Stack enough of them and discipline stops being a grind. It becomes the autopilot that flies your boring, read peaceful and intentional, life straight towards everything loud success could never deliver. Chapter 7. The work behind the work. None of this happened overnight. A big piece of the puzzle was enrolling into an NLP program. My brother had done it and recommended it. I had no clue what I was getting into, but I trusted him, so I signed up. Every month I'd spend 3 days on a farm in a small group digging deep into personal development. It was uncomfortable, confronting, and transformative. And it changed me. I connected the dots between years of reading, podcast binging, and journaling. It gave me frameworks, tools, new ways of seeing myself. Ingrid, the coach who guided me through it, made a massive impact on my life. That year taught me something I'll never forget. Investing in yourself, time, energy, money is never wasted. We live in a world obsessed with output, but the real work, it starts inside. In silence, in stillness, in structure. That's how you go from feeling lost and drained to living a life you actually designed. Once the structure was in place, the pressure finally dropped, and that's where the real peace began. Doing the work. 1. What could you simplify or automate to make space for what matters? 2. What small daily or weekly routine already brings you calm and clarity, and how could you build more of that into your schedule? 3. What are you currently saying yes to out of guilt, fear, or habit that you know you have to start saying no to? 4. What's one system or habit you could build this week that your future self would thank you for? Open quote. Anyone can hustle hard for a month. The real flex is showing up for 10 years without burning out. End quote. Chapter 8. Peace over pressure. Someone I worked with left his job without a backup plan. After years in the system, he expected to unravel, to cry, to regret it. But instead, he felt calm. Not a shallow calm, but the kind that comes from somewhere deep. The kind that says, you finally stopped pretending. No more fitting into a version of life that wasn't his. No more pushing through his misalignment. He told me, even when I get the things I want, I never feel this calm. But now, it's different. I didn't think peace could feel this physical. That conversation reminded me of the following moment in my own life. I was walking through the city center and decided to walk home through the harbor. It was a sunny day, comfortable temperature, and I had no headphones in. I wasn't thinking about a deadline, or a launch, or what had to be done. I was just there. One of the easiest ways I protect this peace now is by building what I call boring rituals. No phone at dinner table, silent drives every now and then, screen-free evenings after 8. At first, my brain screamed for distraction, like a kid throwing a tantrum. But if you push through those first 15 minutes, the storm passes. That's when the good news shows up. Ideas, perspective, presence. It's wild how much life opens up when you stop numbing every quiet moment. My days had become predictable in the best way. My energy was stable, my head was clear, my nervous system wasn't running on caffeine or cortisol. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing something, I was just living. It wasn't just that I felt better, it was that life started to feel lighter. There was less resistance in everything. The work didn't feel like a struggle, tasks didn't pile up in my head. Even creativity started to return. I wasn't sitting around waiting for inspiration, I was creating from a place of rest, not recovery. My thoughts were clearer. I could focus for longer stretches without grabbing my phone every 5 minutes. When something unexpected came up, an annoying email, a cancelled call, a client request, I didn't overreact. I responded calmly, like a version of myself I hadn't known existed before. This feeling, this stability was new for me. For years, I thought I needed chaos to be creative. I believed that intensity was part of the deal. You want the highs, you pay the price. That was the lie I lived by. This calm wasn't killing my drive, it was revealing what actually mattered. I became more patient with my clients. I had more presence with my daughter. I started enjoying the in-between moments, the quiet walks, the solo lunches, the slow Sundays. I was no longer swinging between all in and burnout. I was just showing up every day with a steady pulse. Protecting my time. What also helped was treating my personal life with the same level of structure and intention as my work. Instead of hoping quality time with friends would just happen, I started scheduling it, literally, in my calendar. I created a quality recurring task, schedule dinner with friends. It sounded simple, and it is, but that one line in my calendar changed everything. It meant that every few months I'd get a nudge. Hey, it's time to check. Reach out, make a plan. And because it was in my system, I actually did it. No more "we should catch up sometime" conversations that went nowhere. No more months flying by where I'd realized I hadn't seen the people I actually care about. Just one small automation that made a huge difference in how connected I felt. Structure doesn't kill spontaneity, it protects what matters. Because let's be real, when life gets busy, even the most important things can slip away if you don't make space for them. Automating what you care about might not sound romantic, but it's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and for the people in your life. And it didn't stop there. I also started scheduling date nights with my girlfriend. Becoming parents changed everything, in a beautiful and chaotic way. Life got busier, noisier, more fragmented. Our energy went into the kids, the house, the business, the logistics of getting through the week, and I started to feel that subtle fear creeping in. What if we lose sight of each other? I've heard too many stories from couples who, once the kids are grown, look at each other and say, "We've lost each other somewhere along the way. We should have made more time for us." I didn't want that to be our story. So just like scheduling work tasks or gym time, I added date nights to our week. I know, it doesn't sound romantic, but it worked. Because love isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the consistency of showing up. And we kept it simple. Easy, sustainable, low barrier, high intention. Every week we'd plan a dinner after the kids went to bed. We'd start while they were eating. A drink and a cheese platter for us while they had their pasta. Once they were down for the night, I'd start cooking something for us. Sometimes it was a creative fancy meal, and sometimes it was just another pasta. It didn't matter. What mattered was this. We need space to talk, to laugh, to ask questions, to check in, to be partners and not just parents. That one evening each week helped us to stay connected in a time when it was easy to drift apart, and it didn't happen by accident. It happened because we scheduled it. One of the biggest shifts I noticed after this transition was something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Not over everything. I know life still throws curveballs. Unexpected things still happen. Kids get sick, plans fall apart, emotions hit. But I felt in control of the parts I could control. I controlled my time, my energy, and how I showed up for myself and for the people around me. I started to really understand something I had only heard in passing before. Time is the most valuable thing we have on this planet, and how you spend it is your real life. Not just in terms of hustle or output, but in the quiet decisions. Who do you spend time with? Where does your energy go? What are you saying yes to? What are you protecting? The 80-20 rule. There's this simple rule that pops up in a lot of areas in life and businesses. The 80-20 rule. You've probably heard it before. 20% of your clients bring in 80% of the revenue. That kind of thing. But I also started to apply this rule into how I live my life. For me, the goal is to have around 80% of my days feel planned, structured, and intentionally designed. Not because I love spreadsheets or calendars, spoiler alert, I don't, but because it gives me a sense of control. And let's be honest, we're all looking for some kind of control, even though deep down we know we'll never fully have it. But if I can control 80% of how I spend my time, who I spend it with, the kind of work I focus on, how I show up for myself, then I know I'm moving into the right direction, towards my goals, towards the life I want, in both business and personal stuff. The other 20%, that's the chaos, the unexpected stuff, the things you didn't plan for but show up anyway. Last minute requests, curveballs, stuff you wish you could ignore but can't. That's where flexibility comes in. And honestly, I think being flexible is a superpower. Yes, I am disciplined. Yes, I have structure. But life doesn't care about your Google Calendar. Things will happen that throw everything off. That's part of the deal. Just last week, I got a message from a client who was on tour in Asia. We'd had a coaching session before he left, just to help him go in mentally prepared and rested. A few days into the tour, he started experiencing panic attacks. Real anxiety. He texted me late at night asking if we could jump on a call. Now, normally I don't work evenings. My calendar is there for a reason, to protect my energy and my time. But in moments like this, I pause. I take a breath, zoom out and ask myself, how important is this really? Does this need my attention right now? And what would it mean if I said yes? In this case, the answer was obvious. Of course I said yes, because this, being that person someone can reach out to in their darkest moments, is one of the biggest reasons why I started coaching in the first place. If I had someone like that back in the day when I was still touring, it would have made a world of difference. Did it mess up my evening plans? Sure. But sometimes that 20% is more important than sticking to the schedule. Flexibility doesn't mean chaos. It means being able to adapt when it actually matters. It's about protecting your time without becoming a prisoner of your own calendar. It's about knowing when to hold the line and when to shift things for something or someone that truly needs your attention. Being flexible makes you stronger, more resilient, more human. And the best part, if you learn to build that 80% solid, you'll always have the space to handle the other 20% with grace. Doing the work. 1. What parts of your life would benefit from more rhythm or consistency? 2. Are there any areas where you're still living reactively instead of intentionally? 3. Who are the people you want to protect time for? And how could you make sure that happens? 4. When was the last time life threw you off schedule? And how did you respond? Open quote. If your life only feels good on holidays, you're doing it wrong. End quote. Chapter 9. Independence Redefined. Freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about knowing what matters and having the courage to choose it. The older I get, the more I realize independence isn't about cutting people off. It's about choosing where you plug in. It's knowing what supports you and what drains you, and making decisions that reflect that clarity. For me, it started small. Planning my mornings on my terms, deciding how much I wanted to work, when to work out, who I spent time with. At first, it felt too simple, almost insignificant. But it turns out those small decisions are everything. They compound into big results. Because when your life is chaotic, your choices are always reactive. You're responding to noise, pressure, urgency. But when you build rhythm, structure, and space, you finally start making choices that are truly yours. That's where independence is born. Not from a bank balance or a business model, but from the ability to say, this is who I am, and this is how I want to live. Financial freedom isn't the finish line. Money matters. I felt the weight of financial stress, and I felt the peace of financial breathing room. But what we all forget is that financial freedom doesn't automatically unlock happiness. You can be debt-free and still be chasing likes. You can own your calendar and still be living someone else's dream. True independence goes way deeper. It's mental, emotional, creative. It's not just, I can do what I want. It's, I know what I want and I'm not afraid to choose it, even when it's unpopular or misunderstood. The artist trap. I see it all the time with the artists I coach. They start making music from a place of passion and curiosity. But then something shifts. A viral track, a label deal, a taste of recognition. Suddenly, they start creating for the algorithm instead of their own taste. And that's when they lose the magic. Because once you're hooked on external validation, you're no longer independent. You're dependent. You're playing someone else's game. And the worst part, it looks like success from the outside. That's the trap. Choosing whose opinion matters. You don't need to stop caring what other people think. You just need to choose whose opinion matters. For me, that's my family, a few close friends, my team, a couple of mentors, and that's it. The moment I stopped performing for strangers and started creating from within, everything changed. The pressure dropped and the work got better. The little moments of independence stack up. Cooking a meal instead of ordering out because you want to fuel your body. Logging off early because your mind needs rest, not more hustle. Saying no to a show or project that pays well but drains your energy. Going to bed at 10 p.m. on a Saturday because you like how that feels more than the party. None of these are sexy. They're not social media worthy, but they're powerful. Because every time you act in alignment with who you really are, you send a message to yourself. I've got this. I can take care of me. So yeah, boring might not impress your followers, but boring, when built on a foundation of true independence, where you pick your values, your rhythm, your path, isn't boring at all. It's deeply satisfying. It's peaceful. It's real. And most of all, it's yours. Redefining success. For most of my life, success meant more. More gigs, more plays, more momentum, more visibility. If things were growing, I was doing something right. If they weren't, I felt like I was falling behind. And because my success was defined by speed and output, I lived my life accordingly. Fast, loud, and reactive. Rest was a luxury. Consistency? That sounded boring. I didn't want stability. I wanted spikes. I didn't want routine. I wanted rush. But what I never realized back then, when you only grow in spikes, you also crash in spikes. It took a full breakdown for me to realize that real success isn't built in sprints. It's built over a long period of time. Doing the same mundane tasks consistently, in boring weeks, repeated habits, clear structure, in showing up again and again and again. The power of consistency. I started treating consistency the same way people treat compound interest. In finance, everyone knows that if you invest small amounts over time and stay patient, it compounds. The results are invisible for a while, but then they snowball. Your money grows because it's not starting over every few weeks. But in regular life, we forget this completely. We want fast progress, big changes, quick transformations. But real growth, the kind that lasts, is always a result of boring repetition. I started applying that logic to everything. My health, 2 workouts a week, every week, nothing heroic. My business, 4 focused work days a week, year round. My content, showing up weekly. And my relationship, a quiet one-on-one dinner every Thursday. None of these things were flashy. None of them looked impressive, but they started compounding. And that's when I redefined success. Not as the peaks in my life, but the patterns. Not what I achieved once, but what I kept doing over time. When success didn't feel like success. I remember one night in particular. I was playing a show in India, the kind of night that was supposed to prove that I've made it. I was standing behind the decks, headlining a show in one of the biggest cities I'd ever played. Packed room, lights, people singing along, phones in the air, my name on the screen behind me in giant glowing letters. If you took a photo of that moment, you'd say I was living the dream. And yet, I felt nothing. Not pride, not excitement, just a strange mix of exhaustion and numbness. I smiled, I played the set, I did my job. But inside I was already thinking about the next flight, the next release, and the next milestone that might finally make it all feel worth to me. It never came. And that's the thing. When your definition of success isn't rooted in who you are, it doesn't matter how much of it you achieve. It won't feel real. Internal versus external metrics. When I look back, I realize I used to measure success with someone else's ruler. I measured it by numbers, bookings, streams, followers. I measured it by reactions, applause, comments, reposts. But none of that actually told me how I felt. None of that told me whether I was proud of who I was becoming, or whether I was even liking the life I was living. Here's the catch. If you never give yourself room to be bored, you'll keep living on other people's metrics. Because you'll never stop long enough to ask yourself the real questions. Every time you reach for your phone in a quiet moment, you're basically saying, "Don't show me what my life really means." That's the real trap. Not just the noise from the outside world, but the noise you create to avoid listening to yourself. Now I track different things. I ask myself, do I feel clear? Do I feel rested? Am I building something that aligns with my values? Am I present with the people that I care about? And am I proud of the way I show up? There's no spreadsheet for that, but when I say yes to those questions more often than not, I know I'm on the right track. I still care about growth. I still care about impact. I still care about making money, reaching people, and doing work that matters. But I don't care about impressing strangers. I care about building a life I don't need to escape from. That is my new metric. If you had told me years ago that I'd find success in slow mornings, deep work, long walks, and shared dinners, I probably would have laughed. Not because I didn't want those things, but because they felt so small, ordinary, unimpressive. I now understand the most meaningful things in life rarely look like success from the outside. It took me years to rewrite my definition of success, to stop chasing and start choosing, to stop measuring with borrowed metrics and start living by my own. And I still catch myself sometimes, getting pulled into the noise, tempted by the shiny next thing, comparing, scrolling, rushing, but I always come back to the question that anchors me. If no one else saw this, would I still want it? That's how I know I'm on the right path. I wasn't chasing anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. Every day, a little more on my own terms. And eventually, without even realizing it, I'd built the kind of life I used to dream about, just in a very different shape than I expected. Doing the work. 1. What part of your old success story are you still chasing, even if it doesn't fit anymore? 2. What's one thing you've achieved that looked good but didn't feel good? 3. In which areas of your life are you most dependent on external validation? 4. Who are the 5 people whose opinion actually matters to you? 5. What does independence look like for you right now? Financially, creatively, and emotionally. 6. Are you living your own version of success or someone else's? Open quote. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want, it's knowing exactly what to say no to. End quote. Chapter 10. The boring life is the dream life. Now, I wake up in the same bed every morning. Sometimes I lay there a little longer. Not because I'm tired, but because I can. Because there's no rush. I check in with how I feel, not with my inbox. I spend my mornings enjoying my family or quietly working on chores, not frantically reacting to messages. I write when I have something to say, not because an algorithm demands it. My days are clear, not packed, but clear. A few coaching calls, some deep work, sometimes no meetings at all. Just time to think, to create, to move things forward without urgency. I stop when I'm done, not when I'm drained. Some days I walk to a nearby lake just to sit there with a coffee. No headphones, no productivity, just water, trees, and stillness. That's the highlight of my day sometimes, and that's the point. I'm not waiting for holidays to feel rested. I'm not fantasizing about escaping. There's nothing to run for anymore. This is why I say boredom isn't weakness. It's an edge. When you stop running from silence, you realize it sharpens you more than any adrenaline rush ever did. My best work, my clearest decisions, and my happiest moments all came from the kind of boredom I used to avoid. Boring isn't weak, it's sustainable. We live in a world that worships speed. Work faster, scale faster, reply faster. If you're not growing aggressively, what are you even doing? We're told to move fast and break things. But what if you break yourself in the process? Rest is seen as suspicious. Saying, take your time, is trendy, but we still reward those who move the fastest. Your value is measured by output, not presence. So when you decide to do the opposite, to create space, to say no, to pause and reflect, it feels like rebellion. Like you're risking your relevance. Like you're falling behind while everyone else is sprinting. Especially in a world where visibility is currency. If you are not posting, are you still relevant? If you're not publishing, are you still credible? And if you're not online, do you even exist? I felt that pressure. I see it in my coaching work, especially with high performers. Artists, entrepreneurs, creatives, people who've built their entire identity around movement and output. Slowing down doesn't feel safe to them. It feels like slamming the brakes. One guy I coached was like a machine, constantly chasing more. Everything had to be perfect. His music, his visuals, captions, emails, meetings, and for a while, it worked. That perfectionism got him results. But behind the scenes, he was running on fumes. Burnout wasn't a risk, it was a baseline. Rest felt dangerous. Slowing down felt like losing control. So we started small. And no, I didn't tell him to stop. I just invited him to shift. We blocked out time to not plan. We built in buffers. We asked what actually matters. At first, it felt counterproductive. Soft, lazy, but slowly something shifted. He started sleeping better. He felt calmer in the studio. His ideas flowed, and his overthinking dialed down. His work didn't suffer, it just sharpened. And that's when it clicked for him. Slowing down didn't make him soft, it made him sustainable. Rewriting success on your terms. I used to be afraid of taking holidays. I travel so much for work, being home is my holiday. But what I really meant was, I'm scared to stop. Even when I went somewhere, my laptop came too. I'd sit in beautiful places and work. Not because I had to, but because I didn't know how to stop. Eventually, I took my first real holiday again. No laptop, no posts, just rest. And you know what happened? Nothing. The world didn't end, my career didn't collapse, nobody forgot about me, and when I came back, I wasn't drained, I was recharged. What you gain when you let go. When I let go of the rush, I didn't lose my edge. I didn't fall behind. I got back to a place where I could think clearly, sleep deeply, and feel proud of how I spent my day. And not just how much I squeezed into it. But more than anything, I got back my presence. These days, there are moments, almost daily, where I catch myself just sitting in the garden with my kids, watching them play. Not scrolling, not checking the time, just watching, listening, being there. Presence isn't just being around, it's being with. With the moment, with your people, with yourself. I still have off days, but now I recognize them. I name them, I tell my partner, hey, I'm not 100% today, just so you know. That small piece of honesty makes everything easier for her, for the kids, and for me. Because when you're present, you stop pretending, you stop performing, You respond in real time, not from a habit or pressure. And that's the kind of success I was always chasing, but never able to reach until I slowed down enough to feel it. The strategic advance of boring. Here's what building a boring life actually unlocks. Clarity. You stop reacting to noise. You make decisions based on what matters. Consistency. You show up. Not for a week, but for years. That's what wins. Energy. You're not constantly in fight or flight mode. You have fuel for real creativity. Freedom. The kind that lets you say no, protect your time, and stay sane. This isn't about coasting. You still have to do the work. You still need to hustle, just not the chaotic kind. You need intentional effort, deliberate practice, repetition, and discipline. That's the real engine behind success. The life you don't want to escape from. I used to think boring meant small, safe, settling. Now I see it for what it really is. Stable, present, peaceful. Boring is what gives the good stuff space to grow. The honest kind of creativity, the deep kind of connection, the quiet clarity that lets you know what matters and ignore what doesn't. I didn't trade ambition for peace. I just stopped burning out to chase goals I didn't even believe in anymore. My life isn't perfect, but it doesn't need to be. I don't need a weekend to recover from my week. Sometimes I joke that I'm mentally retired. Really? I'm just free. And it still surprises me almost daily how good it feels to sit on the floor and watch my kids play, to not be in a rush, to finally say, good is good enough. You don't have to keep proving yourself. If you're still chasing, still trying to earn your worth through noise, still waiting for the next milestone to give you peace, let me say this. You don't have to keep doing it that way. You can build a life that feels good today, not someday. You can choose peace, even if no one claps for it. You can choose presence, clarity, rhythm, and real freedom. Build in time to stand still. Slow down, reflect. Because if you don't, you'll fly right past the life you're trying to build. A boring life isn't a detour from the dream. It is the dream. Doing the work. 1. What does success actually mean to me, beyond numbers and recognition? 2. Am I building a life I'll still want 10 years from now, or just surviving this year? Open quote. I wasn't building a career, I was building a cage. End quote. Chapter 11. Acknowledgements. This book would have never seen the light of day without the people who remind me every single day why a boring life can actually be a happy one. First and foremost, I want to thank my partner. Your unconditional love, patience, and reality checks kept bringing me back to what truly matters. To my children, for your endless questions, spontaneous lab climbs, and for forcing me to close the laptop and go play outside. You make everyday life anything but boring, and sometimes a bit tiring. My parents, thank you for your example of simplicity and devotion. You showed me that stability and love are the best stage for growth. A warm thank you to my coaching clients and community who shared their stories with me and allowed me to include fragments. Your courage inspires. And finally to you, the reader. You picked this book in a noisy world. Thank you for your attention, time, and trust. I hope these pages invite you to embrace your own boring life with pride. Regards, Joey. Chapter 12. Stuff that helped me. During the years I spent rebuilding myself, I came across a bunch of books, podcasts, and videos that really made a difference. So I figured, why keeping them to myself? But first, a quick disclaimer. I'm not a big reader, never have been. Sitting still with a thick book full of theory and jargon, nope, not my thing. Discovering audiobooks was a game changer. Suddenly, reading could happen during walks, workouts, or long drives. And when it comes to content, I don't want complex frameworks or fancy academic language. I like things simple, practical, and straight to the point life advice that I can actually apply the same day. So here's the list of the stuff that helped me along the way. Books that hit home, podcasts that gave me clarity, videos that gave me great insights. No fluff, just things that resonated. I hope they do the same for you. Books. Indistractable by Nir Eyal. The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Excellent Life Advice for Living by Kevin Kelly. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Soul for Happy by Mo Godwat. Same as Ever by Morgan Housel. Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Podcasts. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck podcast by Mark Manson. The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. The High Performance Podcast by Jake Humphrey and Damien Hughes. Videos. Everybody Dies, But Not Everybody Lives by Prince Iya. A Letter to the Reader. Hey, I know what it's like to feel like you can't slow down. Like if you even think about taking your foot off the gas, everything will fall apart. The momentum, the attention, the gigs, the belief people will have in you. Like it's all being held together by your ability to keep going, no matter what. I've been there, telling myself, I've come too far to stop now. And I'm not here to tell you to stop. I'm here to tell you, you can keep going. Just not in a way that costs you your health, your joy, your sanity, and your life outside of music. I don't want you to quit. I want you to last. To build a career that fuels you instead of draining you. You don't have to pick between passion and peace. You don't have to trade your well-being just to stay visible. You can still grow, still win, still dream, but not if the old way is already burning you out. Not if you're starting to feel numb. Not if you wake up wondering when it's going to feel good again. What if you didn't have to push so hard? What if there's nothing left to prove? What if success didn't come with a side of burnout? This isn't about slowing down. It's about building something you can actually carry. A rhythm that fits you, your energy, your values, your life. Yes, you can keep going. But let's make sure you're still standing when you get there. You deserve a career you don't need to recover from, and a life that holds more than just music. If no one ever told you that before, I just did. Regards, Joey. Keep going. If this book resonated with you, don't let it end here. The biggest challenges in my life didn't come from reading. They came from putting ideas into practice, having honest conversations, and building systems with support. That's exactly why I started artist coaching. It's where I help artists and creatives design a career and a life they don't need to escape from. I'd love to invite you to continue the conversation with me. Go to artistcoaching.nl and let's build a life that actually feels good together.